Hey everyone, welcome to the Seven Figure Journey podcast. One of your hosts, Joel, today. And today we're interviewing Kate from Greyhorse. And I'm super excited to have her. She has some really cool things that she's been working on for about a decade. Super high level people, doing some really good things in this world around women and people of color. And we're both going to get to learn more about what she does. And this is going to be fun. Kate, why don't you introduce yourself a bit and go from there?
Sure. So I'm Kate Gardiner. I'm the CEO and founder of Greyhorse. We're a full service communications agency that works at the intersection of crisis communications and the public. We do three main things. One is traditional public relations. The second is events, and producing events, conversations, dinners, conferences, all sorts of things along those lines. And then the third thing is crisis communications, which is the bulk of our business. It's the challenging situation where you intervene in a developing scenario that may be controversial in public and figure out the best means forward. We very much do this in partnership with litigators. We do this in partnership with public figures. And of course, we do this for companies who find themselves suddenly at the center of attention for some sort of public spectacle. We've done this in the context of diversity, equality, and inclusion. We've done this in the context of women's rights and sexual assault. And of course, we've done this in the context of criminal flex activities that have reflected poorly on anything, but you never know what's next. That's the fun part about doing this business.
There's a lot to dive in there. Honestly, for me personally, like I'm always the type of person that wants to like soak up information. Um, I know that a lot of your clients are confidential. You're not going to be able to talk details about any specific stories, but maybe you could give like general management communication agency part. Curious, like so. Obviously, we see crisis like every day. The news, celebrities, this or that. Like there's like an everyday thing. You go on Instagram and you see this happened to this person, etc. And so, from what I'm gathering, is like you play a key role within certain elements. I guess people come to you of higher net worth and how to properly navigate those situations. What's your typical process look like when you get somebody, let's say celebrity status, or somebody who's in the public eye that comes to you with a crisis? I know you said you work with litigators, but what does that process look like?
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is to be onboarded by either the individual who's most dramatically affected or someone who cares for them. And that's typically someone in a business relationship who cares for their assets or cares for their personal brand. This could be your public relations team, it could be your attorney, and it can, of course, be your accountant or other money manager type person. And in these circumstances, sometimes we know that something's coming. So, for example, if someone's filed a lawsuit against you or has given you notice that they intend to do so, we will come up with an action plan related to that lawsuit. In other circumstances, sometimes we wake up and our name is all over the internet. Best course of action is, given those circumstances, this can happen because, for example, you posted something online that didn't go well or went too well, or you are the subject of scrutiny in some way. We have a lot of intergenerational conflicts. We have a lot of different types of conflicts between individuals these days, and all of those scenarios can merit a special response. The smallest things I've responded to tend to be sort of local and dramatic. PTA battles, for example. The larger things, you've definitely seen our work on various very public hashtags. And sometimes we are at the beginning of those hashtags, and sometimes we're sort of participating in them. But most of the time, it's a public figure who wants to take action in some way about the circumstances they find themselves in. And our process goes from this initial onboarding, which is usually within 24 hours of the lawsuit notification, for example, or the viral moment, all the way through sort of an 18-month cycle where we're trying to either rebuild the person's reputation or otherwise engage with the person's reputation in a more positive way. And sometimes that's more possible than others, but we do the best that we can given the circumstances that have come up to make the person or people happier, all things considered.
What comes to my mind, I'm curious, what type of team does it take to put together a service like this? Apart from, litigators.
Yeah, so we have me and one other person who tend to lead the crisis communications responses. And then we have a team of folks who do all sorts of different things depending on the circumstances. Every single crisis is different, and to use an opportunity to build their followers. And those things really just depend. There is an overarching goal amongst most people to spin things into a positive direction. And we try to do that whenever it's possible. But it's always an adventure. I can't always predict what the public response to something is going to be. We also intercede a lot with the media, so we will redirect the media attention in a way that we prefer. That doesn't always work, but it does work most of the time, particularly if we're able to guide the media reporter or whoever in a more positive direction for the client.
Seems like a very interesting field of work, honestly. It's pretty cool. I'm curious to know what got you started and wanted to do this. Yeah, like what's that founding story?
Sure. So how did we get here? Yeah, so I was a journalist. You can Google and dig really deep, and eventually you'll find me on air. But I was a journalist for many years, and then I was an executive of sorts for media. And in all of those circumstances, much of what I was doing would explode, and it would be all over the media. And that was kind of the point of hiring me for many years. And so when I pivoted and I started doing it for crisis communications, it was in part because media is really struggling right now to take advantage of this new era of content creation. And it's quite the adventure trying to figure out how to find a path forward using all of these new tools and recognizing that content is no longer siloed, content is no longer as edited or controlled as it used to be. And the concept of news generation has really, really changed. And there was just an opportunity to start doing that. We actually started with social media first. So we mostly were doing social media related crisis communications. But we've really branched out in the past few years, particularly because we've been in the right place at the right time. But throughout my reporting career, I also was in the right place at the right time, sort of. And I just ended up having disasters following me every time I switched news organizations. And so ultimately all those skills really are only transferable to like hugely fast-paced situations, which has kind of become our specialty. Well, you can, and I gotta grab a puff. Now with electricity. Carry on.
Me swaying a little bit from the major topic, which is like leadership and team, but I'm just out of curiosity, like, so we have all these big media companies, right? But as we go further into the future, obviously social media is the media, right? So I'm just curious, how do you navigate typically, I know every case is wildly different. How do you navigate something that is so like decentralized, I guess, right? To put it like that, right? Where everyone.
So it's very important to define your situation, your scenario, your role, the role that you'd like to play. And then really go hard on it. You can see young celebrities, young reporters or reporter type storytellers really lean into their, personal brand. And when you lean into your personal brand, that means that people will recognize you immediately. There's everybody from new types of red carpet reporters to the person who covers only in Dade down here in Florida, to the person who is the immediate reporter in Hawaii who covered so much of the Maui County fires. And that sort of distributed ecosystem means that those people are building a very trusted, very thorough audience that in turn, hopefully, is in keeping with the values that they set out at the beginning. I think that many of us are driven to perhaps embellish the truth or otherwise use social tools to build audience irrespective of those values. But I feel strongly that if you shape them carefully, you will be put in a position where you do stand out, you are unique, and ultimately, hopefully, you are telling your truth to your audience, whatever that might mean to you. So it really just kind of depends. What I do tell people to do, though, as a first step is to just pick one platform and be very good at that platform. There are many, many, many different ways to communicate with your audience, from, a WhatsApp broadcast channel all the way through a variety of country-specific apps where, you might be using Line, but Line is incredibly popular in Korea. You could be using WhatsApp Business and working in the Middle East across country lines that are very difficult to cross. You could be on TikTok, which in theory, at least this week, is one of the most popular ways of communicating with a large audience. And you may actually make a little bit of money off of it. But mostly showing up for your values and really leaning into building the type of audience that's most meaningful and important to you is key to making a brand that stands out and ultimately gives you the resources and access that you're looking for, depending on what you do. It's interesting to see the democratization of media, because it was such a limiting factor before, and now the audiences are everywhere for all sorts of different reasons. And it's not just about being beautiful. It's not just about being smart. It's not being incisive. It's about everything. And it's your look. It's your tone. It's your aesthetic. It's your affect, and it's also the kinds of stories that you're putting out there. And I think every platform has a different point of access, and every platform has a different ROI, and it just kind of depends what you're going for as you build out whoever it is that you want to be in the public space. The caveat being really using your whole personality to be if you ever want to capitalize or sell that IP. If it is your whole personality, it's going to be very, very difficult to divide yourself from that, and that's something to really consider as you continue and grow in this space.
Insightful. I mean, I'm sure any business owners that are listening, I'm sure there's a lot of gems even within the personal branding element of everything that you're talking about. Now I'm curious to pivot back to leadership and team development. What has that journey looked like for you? I know you yourself coming from a world with deep domain expertise within journalism, and you're able to transfer that into this business. What did it look like to build a team of other people in this very highly specialized business that you?
I've been very lucky that everyone who works for me has been here for a long time. And we've effectively built the business together. I think that may change in the coming months if we choose to expand, but as it sits right this second, my team have just sort of grown with me, and in particular, they've really outdone themselves in becoming the best person suited to the role that they've chosen. And so that's great. I think the pain point that everybody talks about, which is like growth past your first or second team, comes to mind, because it's since our company is so personality based and personality driven, it's actually difficult to figure out how to expand it. Everything that we do is personal relationships. The reason our prices can be high is because personal relationships, and the reason that we have so many clients that come back to us time and time again, no matter what's going on, is again personal relationships, and that's just different. than anything that's scalable. We're never going to be SaaS. We're never going to be out here selling widgets. Our only sellable product is our time. It's an interesting challenge to figure out what to do with that, especially since I actually don't like to put myself on platforms as a personality these days. And
what? So I see that. I guess from what I'm hearing, you're still in the space of. I guess you mentioned deciding whether you're going to scale or not, and most of your team have been with you, and they've done a phenomenal job at the business. And so I'm curious, what have been like lessons that you've gathered along the journey that you feel applicable to other?
There are a lot of untoward lessons that I've learned over the years. We've had all sorts of different adventures, but the first thing is really understanding who your ideal clients are and who your ideal customers are, depending on how you look at people that you work with. But those things are really, really, if you're building services for individuals, you have to really cater to their needs and their styles of working. And that can be the little things like Microsoft Teams versus Google. Or it could be the big things, which is, showing up to their house for dinner or really participating in long conversations with them, or, answering the phone at 3:00 in the morning when they're worried. And that's something to be really cognizant of, I think. And so that's something to really think about too as you continue it in your journey as an entrepreneur. It's like, how does my product work for this market, and does it need to change or grow with the times? Because sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it is really the personality that they're looking for, and other times it's just how many views can we get on TikTok, or how many widgets can I sell.
And maybe aside from the dynamics of identifying like your ICP and being very clear who your client is, what they want, kind of navigating that process, what did the journey look like for you as far as you developing as a leader for your team, especially from when you started 10 years ago to now?
I mean, I like to have very independent people working for me. And so what we have created is the opportunity for independent people to lead their own environments. It's essentially almost cooperative in the way that we work. And people know what they want to do or how they want to do it. And I think that that's a bit different. We're not doing structured team retreats. We're not out here all doing a book club. Perhaps we should. But at this point, it's here. Every team leader effectively takes points on their case and runs it through to the ground. And sometimes that's a month, and sometimes it's years, and sometimes it's weeks, and you never know. But our tactics are really like work openly, work honestly, and then have solid work-life balance if it's possible for you and if that's what you want. We also, of course, appreciate and cater to workaholics whenever we have them. But most of the time, my goal is to just make it so that you are working in a place that you want to work, as long as you want to work there. Because we have such niche topics at hand, sometimes, we do a lot of research, we understand the issue together, and we do a lot of crib notes and sheets to work forward. But I gotta say, I'm probably the most relaxed version of a leader. I think mostly because my team have been so good over the years, and they haven't required that much direction. It's definitely a case where making the investment has really helped to hire the right person for the role. And so we've been super lucky. I've seen my peers really struggle with being willing to delegate and not cater to the expertise of the staff. But my perspective is, I hired you for a reason. You seem to have expertise on the matter. I'm going to trust you to know what you're doing. It's only bit me in the ass a couple times, so I still hang out there. But it just kind of depends. I mean, I feel like a lot of folks really want to come in and really boss people around, and I appreciate why you would want to do that, and I appreciate wanting to micromanage to some extent. But yeah, I don't know that is as applicable here, unfortunately, as it might be for another company. In part because what we do is so weird and so nuanced that it can't be scaled necessarily. I see a lot of the big agencies have crisis teams, and it still is going to come down to the person that runs the crisis team every single time, and it's going to come down to the reactions that they have in the moment. And yeah, we may have all the same playbook, which is sort of respond, engage, deflect, and attempt to move forward. But you're also going to have to make those game day decisions where that response comes off as tone deaf, and it's not going to work for the company. So it just kind of really depends. That's why you hire comms people. That's why you hire specifically crisis comms people. We have a different attitude and aptitude for things, but it also means that it's difficult to kind of come out here and say, here's the formula that's going to fix everything, because there isn't one.
Who has a book company. He helps entrepreneurs create books like really fast. And the whole idea is to put the framework in a book as a lead magnet to like help promote the business and generate clients. So just to, I guess for clarity, in your case, I know you mentioned like these specific words like I think you said engage, deflect, and I think you mentioned about two others. Is there a framework that you follow, just broadly speaking, out of curiosity, or not really?
There's a pattern, and we essentially, someone calls, we assess the situation. We determine first if it's fixable or addressable. Sometimes people will call and I'll just be like, yeah, sorry, that's going to happen. But if they go through that, then we go through a thought tree of the different possibilities of how this might play out. Sometimes we do that in a formal exercise with the client and their attorneys. Other times we do that rapid paced on that first call. It just kind of depends. I don't have a better system. Sometimes the client is overly emotional at the time they've engaged us, and so we're figuring that out. We're figuring out the best way for that person or brand or group of companies or whatever it is to tone down some of that emotionality. Oftentimes we take away their phone or other engagement device of some sort so that we can mitigate their access to the internet for a period of time. And then we look at the business ramifications first. We do sort of a physical assessment, and provided that they're not in physical danger, it's very much how is this going to have an effect on the way that you make money or generate revenue or ultimately the overarching value of your brand, and in what direction are we going from there? And that's the type of question that we can't always answer initially. Sometimes people have a very obvious way of making money, and other times it's very nuanced or subtle, or it's sometimes also family money or something like that. Or sometimes they're flat broke, and it looks like they've been living the life of Riley, and in fact they're sleeping on somebody's couch someplace. And we try to take that into account, like what is your goal here, and how do we get there? I have been very fortunate that the people who walk in the door typically have some understanding of the impact, I guess, that's going to happen. And they often are coming to us on the worst day of their lives. So we are often, very present and emotionally available to them while we figure out what's going to happen. If we see that it's going to tank their business, for example, we'll discuss how their immediate future in that context. If they are going to go to jail, we discuss whether or not what the attorneys are going to do and what the direction should be from there. And then we also have a pretty frank conversation with the lawyers about whether or not we think that the individual is going to have a chance of getting out of it, whatever it is. And I can't, because in 87 different events, I can tell you 87 different things happened. In some ways, some people rebound and are stronger than ever. And typically people who've been canceled come back within 2 to 5 years if they're going to come back as public figures. Other people use public opinion ways in their favor and they get access to things that they never expected. And still others get a book deal and make a TV show and then continue on their merry way. But it really just kind of depends. But it is all about that response in the first 72 hours of any particular quandary.
One of my final questions here that I have is, where do you see you taking Greyhorse in the future? Like, where do you Greyhorse could be?
We will be a small part, specialist part of a bigger agency, if only because that would smooth out some of the dramatic cash flow drama that we have as something that works really hard in spurts. But, we've been an independent agency the whole time I've been working. It means that we are a very unique workplace. It means that people who work here feel super lucky that they work here, because they can do just about anything that they want as long as they finish their homework on time, and it's all fully remote, and all of that. But I don't know. It's one of the reasons that my name's not on the door is because I just really wanted it to be able to stand separately from me. Actually, a lot of my peers in media, and particularly in communications, need that name recognition, and it's not necessarily something that, is vital to my future as an entrepreneur. I have to say, I always thought I was going to be the CEO of the New York Times, and life has pivoted a bit, and this is kind of more fun. Especially in this era of media. But it's also a huge adventure, and I can't come out here and say this is my goal because I'm not sure what that's going to be.
Honestly, this was fascinating to me. Honestly, I learned a lot from you. Maybe one day in the future, I'm super famous, and hopefully, I won't need any of these services. Who knows? But I think this is good because there are a lot of entrepreneurs within our community, and hey, people have real lives and real things happen to them, right? And so, maybe somebody. Yeah.
The most dramatic ones are almost always the ones extraordinarily immediately relevant. And that is your PTA, it's your small town politics, it's your gym coach who, gets in a car accident and does something dumb. It's your principal who goes wandering and you're just kind of like, why did you do that? Or things like that, where it has such a dramatic effect on a small population of people who care very, very, very much. And the big ones kind of like float over your head. So if you look at like Free Britney a couple of years ago, as interesting as that may have been to watch, the direct impact on you of whether or not Britney Spears has her own Instagram password is not particularly significant. We can make you watch it because God knows you're watching it, and you'll watch her Instagram for the rest of your life because it's so unusual. But her fan club getting her out of what they perceived as custodial guardianship is a very different problem that is unlikely to affect the function of individual humans on a day-to-day basis. And that's just something that we think about. We also, when we talk about Me Too, like if you look at any of the women that we've ever represented, and you definitely have clicked on some links, what you're going to see is they were fortunate. Some of them were very fortunate that their opponent was a man in power. and thus that person had resources. And so their just desserts included getting a lot of their opponent's cash. And it felt like a payout. Most people, if they're sexually assaulted, don't necessarily have that ROI. And so whilst you may have the pain and the suffering and everything like that, you don't necessarily get the justice. And I think that that is one of the challenges of this sort of communications, is just because it was resolved in a high profile way doesn't mean that it has a meaningful impact on your personal existence. In some cases, it does change the law, but even then, if your circumstance that may be parallel to theirs were to be reported, it might not give you what you're hoping for. And so there are a lot of different things that come from crisis communications. We often spend years with our clients behind the scenes, just coaching them down to some sort of sustainable path in relationship with the internet in particular. But, a lot of this stuff has long-term change, implications and long-term change for the individual or the company. And we've seen a lot of strange things happen afterwards.
Maybe just to follow up on that, do you have aspirations, or is the company? I guess this probably connects to the 20% nonprofit piece, but I'm curious, what specific causes or even policies that you may be through your company helping to push for, so that
so this year and last year too, we were very happy to represent Plan C, which is a medication abortion access group, and they are sort of guerrilla warfare on the front of the American abortion rights drama. And they've done extraordinary work in public spaces. We've also were strangely lucky and surprised to find that we were representing Melissa Mills, who's the third daughter of the woman who is known as Jane Roe. And we represented her for several months whilst we were all discussing the end of Roe versus Wade and the consequences there. And then we've also represented a ton of women at the forefront of the Me Too movement, at the forefront of the fight against online harassment. And we've also worked with the queer community on making sure that folks have access to the types of care that they need, which is a different type of a progressive cause. And then during the events after George Floyd's death, we were able to give a lot of time to diverse groups of founders and individuals who wanted to be more prominent as in the context of whatever work they were doing. So all of those things just kind of depend are good causes. We've spent before George Floyd, we were working primarily actually on the environment, and we will probably also do an environmental project or two this year. I'd imagine we will address climate change in some fashion, but I'm not sure how we're going to do that yet.
If I come across anyone across some type of personal branding crisis, you're going to be the first person that comes to mind. And that's great, because I feel like I just gained a resource here. And anybody who's listening to this, honestly, because I don't think these type of services are top of mind to people,
There's it is actually people in the US who do this, and of those 200 or 300, I'd like to think that we're some of them. We're very, very passionate about it when it appears. We do many other things in support of our work, but crisis is absolutely my favorite thing.
Well, okay, thank you so much. Anything else you would want to add before?
No worry. No, I would just say that if folks are reaching out to me or someone like me, just be really realistic that whilst a precipitating event may happen very quickly, the resolution doesn't usually come very fast. And it is important to understand that a few minutes online, for example, can really change your life. And also, they can't be taken back. The internet is more permanent in a different way than anything that came before it.
Yeah, that's like both like a good thing and like a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a bad, yeah. It's
It
like
is,
one screw up
exactly.
that because we're all human, and nobody's perfect. And sometimes people do things without intention or something like that. And so it's crazy
Mhm.
to think about it. That we all got to be really careful about, I guess, how we operate. But it's good to know that there's services out there like yours to help mitigate that. Especially like something that comes to mind is like, let's say somebody's trying to like
Mhm.
say
And I'm
things
always
about
happy
you
to
that
talk
aren't
about
true.
this stuff. So anybody who wants to is always welcome.
Sorry, what did you say?
No worries, no worries. I got a lag. Anyone who wants to reach out is welcome to do so. I'm really easy to find online. And Joella, I'm sure you're going to send me a link sometime soon, and it'll be on all of my social platforms whenever it comes to life. But if you have any questions, feel free to send an email. I'm always available.
Thank you so much, Kay. It was a pleasure. I learned a lot. I know that anybody that's tuning in also has learned a lot. And just want to say thank you so much again.
Yeah, nice to see you.